Let's get started with the file management. What I like to do is I create a new folder with your project name. And then within that folder, I'm going to create a series of other folders to keep everything organized, because the way Premiere Pro works, it's going to kind of keep coming back and referencing these files. So just keeping them all packaged together will help you so you can take this one main file and you can transfer it to another computer, and then you would just need to relocate maybe one file and it'll understand where to look for all the rest, if that makes sense. Ultimately, it's just a nice way to keep everything packaged together. So within your project name file, I like to create a file for Premiere. And within that file, that's where once we log into Premiere, it's going to ask us to create a new project and create a save location for that project. And this is going to be that location. We're gonna save our Premiere file within this Premiere folder. Some of the other folders I routinely will create will be a video folder. And within that video folder, I'll typically have a folder for my B-roll and a folder for interviews, and however else you want to break down your video files. Another folder I'd like to create, audio. Within here, you might have a folder like voiceover, maybe your music, sound effects, things like that will all go in your audio folder. Also, there's a folder for exports. Within your exports folder, that's when you're all done, I just like to save out my final projects, the final output of my videos within the exports folder. So then once we go into Premiere, you can see it loads up here, and we'll just want to select new project. And this is where I was talking about, where you'll want to title your project name and then click on the browse button, and here's where you'll want to select that Premiere folder that we created in our test folder here. You select that, say OK, and then we're launched right into Adobe Premiere Pro, ready to start building our project. So once you get into Adobe Premiere Pro, you have your project all set up, you're going to have a workspace here to work within. And right across the top here are different names that they have pre-built for you for workspaces. You might have one called Learning that I've already kind of removed from this section. And I've also created my own workspace called Main. But as you go through these, this is not changing your project. These are just different views to work within. They're laid out here so that with different panels to access as you go through, that will make it easier to work on that section of your video, whether you're working on the graphics or the effects, color, editing, so forth. I like this Main sort of setup, and you can create your own workspaces just by clicking and dragging certain panels around. Maybe you want this effects control to be down within here. So once you can apply an effect here, and then you'll be able to manipulate the properties of that effect. You can manipulate your workspace to something that is comfortable for you, or you can just kind of go with these pre-built ones. It's totally fine. Just wanted you all to be aware that you have the opportunity to customize a workspace. If you do build a custom workspace and you were to shift things around, you simply go up into Window, Workspaces, and you can save as a new workspace. Once you have the layout that you like, you can save changes to a workspace. So be cautious of doing that. If you save changes to a workspace of one of their default ones, then it won't be like it was as default. So ultimately, you can customize your workspaces and create the layout that you like. I typically work in this workspace, but I will have a bigger monitor normally too when I'm working on it. So depending on what you're working on and what's going on, just know that you're able to customize. Just to kind of give you a quick lay of the land, over here is the project folder. This is where you will import media, as it says, and it'll hold all the structure of all your files and things. An effects panel is a great panel. That's where it keeps all the different effects within, so you can layer in your blurs and different things like that when you want to apply those to your videos. I like having access to that at all times, which is why I have this sort of layout. Over here is your source monitor. So when you're working on a piece, the initial look at it is going to go into your source monitor, where you can set your ins and outs and then drop it into your timeline, which is right down here. And your timeline will feed into your program monitor. Your program monitor is showing you the output. It's showing you what's within your timeline. So that one's pretty much always important to have. I think it's probably listed through the majority of these because you want to see what you're working on. So that's your program monitor over here. And then over here we'll measure your audio levels. As you're going through your video, you'll see this bouncing around. So that's your audio level tracker monitor. Up here, I like having my effect controls. So as I'm working through on my project, I can click here and it'll show all the properties of the effects of the clip or any effects that I've applied to the clip. And within there, I can manipulate and change those. I select up here to have my audio track mixer. So once I'm playing through here, I will be able to adjust my audio 1, 2, 3, and the levels of those. So if I have a music bed down here on audio 3, I can slide that down. So that's just sort of the lay of the land that I like to have. But there really is no right or wrong. It's whatever is comfortable for you to work on. I just like to have this sort of main one. But as we go through, I'll show you how these ones can work in your favor, especially with a smaller monitor like a laptop, which is what I currently am on. But this lay of the land is primarily the editing tab here. The only difference is I took this test project and I moved it up here mainly. That's the main difference that you can see to kind of create the layout that I like. Now that we understand the workspaces, let's start talking about how we can import our media so that we can start building up a project. So I'm going to actually just use the assembly workspace here. And there are multiple different ways to import your media. One, you can right click in this section and go to import. Locate where your media is, which would be within your file format structure here. And let's say we want to bring in our B-roll and just select it like that. That's one way to import. Then we can click on it over here, and this is going to show us our source monitor. And you can see there's all our video footage of our B-roll. Another way to import is to simply double click in this blank space, and it'll bring up that your file browsing, and you can just go and select your clips. Voila, there we go. Now we have our interview footage. Another way that is also pretty dang easy is to just go browse within your files and say we want to bring this voiceover clip in. You can click and drag it and just drop it right in. And right there, we've now assembled we've imported all of our footage and resources for our project. Also within this view, it's built to minimize any distractions so you can start to lay out your project. So we don't have a sequence built here yet, so our timeline is blank. So to create a sequence, we can either click this new item button and create a sequence. And if you know the format that you want, you can select that and build your sequence within here and say that we wanted this HDV 1080p 30 or maybe 24 probably on this one, but we'll do 30. And I'll show you what happens when it doesn't even match. And you might want to title it, let's say test sequence here. And so now we have a sequence showing up down here, and we can see our video and audio tracks. We got our playhead, and now our program and source. So program is going to show us what's on our timeline. And again, this is just a view. So if we go to editing, now we have our source over here and our program. It's just a different layout. But we'll go back over to the assembly tab. And here's our source. And let's start to drop some of our source into our timeline. Something important to note as you're going through and building this, depending on your computer's performance abilities, you might want to select your resolution over here and downgrade it. If it's on full, it's going to potentially be harder to play through.
So in this class, you get hands-on experience.
Not necessarily, but if you do notice any sort of lag going on, you might want to adjust your resolution. And a half or a quarter, again, does not impact the actual video itself. It is merely lowering the resolution up here so that it can play smoother. It won't look as good, but it's going to play back faster so that it doesn't slow down your workflow trying to power through the full preview. So I think we'll go with even a quarter on this. I think it'll be fine. All right, so let me pull this back to the beginning. Up here is where you have your controls of how you want to pull things into your timeline and how you can impact your video clip. You have your play button.
So in this class, you get hands-on experience.
You can stop. Over here marks an end point. So it'll mark an end wherever your playhead is at. So if I click that, you can see it brought this gray bar up. And we have a little endpoint here, and it's not this lighter gray over here. So that's our endpoint. And then maybe we want to play a little bit more.
Shooting video and practicing composition and capturing good audio.
And then let's say we wanted that to be our out point. You can click here to create an out point. And now that clip is we're just going to pull from our source this small little section of that video clip. Then over here we have some options of how we can drop that into our timeline. We have an insert and an override. The insert, there's nothing in here, so both of these are going to essentially do the same thing. So if we click the insert button, it's just going to drop that down in here. and we're switched over to our program, and our playhead is right at the end of the clip, so it went black, but we pulled that back. You can see we got that. We've now put that little snippet in our timeline. And we go back over to our source. Maybe we want to select another in and out, so we'll just kind of do a quick random one here. And I want to demonstrate here, this is what the override edit does. So if I were to, well, I'll demonstrate both of them. So if I were to click insert again, based on where the playhead's at, it's going to insert this clip right in front of this, because my playhead's right in front of it. So if I click insert, you can see it pushed that over and created this other clip. If we had our playhead kind of right in the middle, it's going to dissect it. It's going to cut it right in half. Sorry, let me go back to the source. So if we click here, insert, you can see it split those two in half. So it will insert wherever the playhead is at. Let's go to some B-roll because I don't like looking at myself. So let's pick another clip here and say we like this shot of the camera. So we can click here for an in, scrub ahead. All right, we just want the camera. We'll put our out. And then we go to the beginning here on our program. And now if I click override, it's going to lay this clip right on top of both of however long this is. It's going to go right on top. It's going to override what's there. See how it did that? Just completely took all that out. So just have a lingering bit of that. I'm just going to delete it. So those are the different ways to kind of import some of your footage. Now, to be good and to be faster, you'll want to get used to using the keyboard shortcuts. Let me get rid of this here. We're going to go back to our source monitor. Bring the playhead back to the beginning. Now we'll go back to the source monitor. And let's just go through and grab some clips of the interview. So the keyboard shortcuts that you should get used to are J, K, and L are going to help you play through your footage. So if I press L, it starts to play through the footage.
Hands-on experience.
I press K, it pauses. J, it rewinds. Pause, K. So if I hit L again, we're going to start playing. If I press it again while it's going, it's going to speed it up a little bit.
And then you take it all back and we put it into Adobe Premiere Pro.
And you can hit it again. It's going to go even faster. And again, even faster. K pauses, J rewinds. Same thing. If I press it again, it's going to go faster. Again, faster. And again, even faster. KO pause. So practicing just kind of playing through your footage in this way
shooting video and
will help you be a little bit faster as you have to go through and look at your clips. Another way that you can stop and pause your footage is the space bar.
How to capture
pressing the space bar once will pause. We'll play, and then pressing again will pause. All right, so JKL, that's going to help us kind of move through and watch our footage. But how do we want to mark these? How do we mark these in and outs with the keyboard shortcuts? So if I press L here.
So in this class.
Oh, I'll pause it there. I know I want to set an endpoint right before the subject here starts to talk, which is me. So right before I start to talk. So I'm going to rewind a little bit. I'll press I, because that's right before I'm going to start to talk. So press I to set my in point and O to set my out. Convenient to remember, right? I and O, in and out. So I got my in point set. I'm going to hit L and I'm going to start playing.
So in this class, you get hands-on experience shooting video and practicing composition and capturing good audio. And then you take it all back and we put it into Adobe Premiere Pro and we see how it can all be edited together.
All right, so there's the end of that clip. So I'll pause it there and I'll hit O to set my out point. So I have my in and my out. If I hit Shift and press I, it's going to jump me back to the beginning of my in point. And if I hit Shift and press O, it could jump me to my out point. But in this case, we're going to do Shift I, hit the space bar.
In this class, you get hands-on
there we go.
experience.
We got that clip set. We like it. It's good to go. So what we can do is we can come over here and we can click the insert or overwrite. But as you can even see as we hover, it's showing us that shortcut key of what could help us do those actions. So a comma, the comma button's going to insert and the period is going to override. Again, conveniently placed right under JKL, and you can see how you could start to move quickly with your hands on marking these clips in and out and dropping them in. So in this case, it doesn't matter. We don't have any other footage, so I'm just going to override and drop that in. I'm going to leave my playhead right at the end there, and we're going to go back over here.
Composition and
Shift O, bring us to the end of that clip, and now let's go forward and grab our next interview clip. And I'll just kind of do this quickly and you'll see how I do it. So I'm about to talk, so I'm going to hit I.
Understanding how to capture good video and audio is kind of like learning how to write with a pencil and paper. Only here your story isn't meant to be read. It's seen and heard, so it's all about good sensory storytelling.
There we go, into that clip. So I'm going to pause it and hit O. And that's all set, so I'm just going to hit the period and drop that into my timeline. Now, I keep pausing as I set my ins and outs, but that is not necessary. As the clip is playing, I can hit I and O, I and O to set those ins and outs as you go. But let's go back to the beginning here and get that third interview clip. So I'm going to hit I.
Through video.
Oh, I want to go back a little bit. Going to hit I here.
Through video, you allow your viewers to experience the story. They get to see and hear the different elements for themselves. It's pretty cool stuff.
There we go. That's the end of that clip. So I'm going to pause and set my out and drop it back in by hitting period. So right there, we got our 3 interview clips in our program monitor. So we can play all those back.
So in this class, you get hands-on experience shooting video and practicing composition and capturing good audio. And then you take it all back and put it into Adobe Premiere Pro and see how it all edit together. Understanding how to capture video and audio is kind of like learning how to write with a pencil and paper. Only here your story isn't meant to be read. It's seen and heard, so it's all about good sensory storytelling. For video, you allow your viewers to experience the story. They get to see and hear the different elements for themselves. It's pretty.
So there we go. So those are the basic ways of how to mark ins and outs of your footage and then drop them in to your sequence. All right, next let's take a look at how we maybe want to start putting this voiceover to go with our interview clips. We have a script done, right? So we can look at the script and say, okay, we need to lay in these voiceover clips ahead of and in between these clips. So same principle.
Okay.
We're going to listen through here.
Voiceover number 1, 3, 2, 1. Cameras, microphones, computers. Cameras, microphones, computers. These are the tools used to create. No, like that. These are the tools to create video. And audio video desktop class. Learn how to use those tools.
Let's do it all one more time.
One more time. 3, 2, 1. Cameras, microphones, computers. These are the tools used to create a video. In the audio video desktop publishing class at LCCC, you learn how to use those tools.
All right, that was a pretty good voiceover there. So we're gonna select that clip, and for right now, let's just keep kind of laying everything out into our sequence in one line, and we'll move things around later. So we'll go ahead and drop that voiceover clip in.
Is that okay? Yeah, that's good. All right. Okay. Voiceover number 2.
So again, just pressing L. Did a countdown, so I know he's about to start his voiceover. So I'll hit the I to set my endpoint.
But understanding the technical know-how isn't all you learn in this class. The real goal is seeing. I'm gonna start again. But understanding the technical. No, I get. Okay.
No, not a good one here. So looks like he's gonna start again. So I'm gonna move my endpoint to here.
But understanding the technical know-how isn't all you learn in this class. The real goal is seeing how that can be used to tell a story.
There we go. That was good. So I'll stop it there, hit my out, drop it in, hitting period. We'll go back over to the source.
Okay, did I stutter? I think that's okay. Yeah, let's do that. Okay. All right. Voiceover number 3. 3, 2, 1.
All right.
And that's a skill that
Pretty sure he's
opens
not
up
gonna get it
job
on the first go.
opportunities. In this digital age, online platforms thrive on video content. According to HubSpot.com, 78% of people watch. Sorry, make a note here. According to HubSpot.com, 78% of people watch online videos every week.
Let's do it all one more time.
Okay. 3, 2, 1.
All right.
That's a skill.
Didn't get a good eye. So again, here's the start, hitting I.
And that's a skill that opens up job opportunities. In this digital age, online platforms thrive on video content. According to HubSpot.com, 78% of people watch online videos every week.
So there we go. Got that last clip. Take that, drop it in. Now let's go over to the editing workflow. So you can see over here, we could have just we'd have our source monitor and our program monitor, but I wanted you guys to see how the assembly, it made it a little bit more focused on that, and you could see the various clips taking up the majority of the space over here. So now we have our different pieces. So we know it starts with this voiceover clip based on our script.
Cameras, microphones, computers. These are the tools used to create a video.
So we need this to go back in front here. And it's perfectly fine to just lay things out in this way and not have to worry about dropping it in as you go, because once you're down here, it is kind of click and drag. Now you kind of got your different building blocks, and you can move them where you want. So this first clip, we want to drag it over here. Now if we click and drag it to the front and we just let go, it's ultimately going to do an override edit, and it's just going to drop it there. So I'll do that real quick so you can see. So we did an override edit there, which is not what we want. So if I were to play that back.
Cameras, microphones, computers. These are the tools used to create a video.
So I'm going to Control Z to undo that. And what we want to happen is we want to do an insert edit basically right over here. So I'm going to click and drag this over. And if you see the icon that it's kind of creating right underneath the cursor, that's showing the override. But as soon as I press Control, it's doing an insert. See that? See how it's shifting? See those little arrows even? It's going to shift. It's showing you that once I put this here, it's going to shift everything else over. So I'll let go. And you can see it shifted that over and laid that piece of audio track in there. So now we have that audio.
Cameras, microphones, how to use those tools.
So in this class, you get
goes right to the start of our interview clip.
experience.
So we know this one will go between the others. So we'll do the same thing. Just hold down that Control, put it in between. Same thing here. Hold down Control, put it in between. So now we kind of have the script of our story laid out.
Cameras, microphones, computers.
With all of our audio.
These are the tools used to create a video. In the audio.
Now, if you're going through and you didn't set your ins and outs quite right, let's do this. Set up an example here. So let's just say we have that. For some reason, we let it play a little far before we set our out point, and we need to trim this in. It's okay to tighten up in this section. So easiest way is you're just right here on your selection tool, and you see this little red icon show up. You can just click and drag that over, and you can clip that out. So now
it's seen and heard, so it's all about good sensory storytelling.
So there we go. So we've cut that part out. If everything's neat and clean, I just like to right click, say ripple delete. It'll tighten everything right back up. Sometimes you won't have the ripple delete option because of the way the rest of your timeline is laid out over here. But if it's laid out nice and clean like that, you can just ripple delete things through. Otherwise, you may have to do one of these and kind of click and select and drag it over. But you can see it kind of snaps to, it creates those little arrows and it'll snap into your timeline.
Cameras, microphones, computers.
So there you have it. There's sort of some of the basics of how to set ins and outs, drop footage in, and start manipulating it within your timeline. For this project, the next thing you'll need to do is start dropping in some of your B-roll footage so that it matches up with what is going on in the voiceover script. Something else to point out is your slider down here can help you zoom in and out on your timeline. So wherever your playhead is going to be the focal point. So if we pull this together, it's going to zoom in super tight. And the extension of the playhead here, that's actually representing one frame. That's how far in you can zoom. So as your timelines start to get longer, you'll want to pay attention, and you may be beneficial to kind of zoom in on a section to kind of help you move things around and make sure they're really aligning to where you want them to be. And you can do the same here on your program and source clips as you're browsing through. Basically, you'll want to go through now and lay out the rest of your clips to match appropriately with the voiceover and build out your entire clip.